So here we are with clip number 2. Bit tired tonight, been at work all day. My little niece picked me up at 6:45. I haven't got into work at that time so early since I worked in the corporate world. Glad I'm not there anymore. Anyway, tonight I'm talking about miscarriage. Can I go through a logical sequence because my brain works in that way? Miscarriage is obviously the start of any kind of pregnancy going wrong, and there are a few different times at which it can happen, and I agree and disagree with the term miscarriage on so many levels. So we've got a chemical pregnancy, which is normally a miscarriage before a ultrasound can pick up a heartbeat. So we've had a positive pregnancy test, and then we've started bleeding like we would normally have a normal cycle. That's the first one. We have a early miscarriage, which they term as first trimester. So anything from when they pick up a heartbeat, which is normally around 6-ish weeks, through to the end of the first trimester, which is 12 weeks. Then we have a late-term miscarriage, which is anything from 13 weeks through to 23 weeks. Now, I'll come to that last one in a little while because I've got a lot of opinions on it. Let's first talk about my experiences. So I've had a chemical pregnancy, which I miscarried naturally. Bleeding was horrendous. For anyone that's been through that, it's not nice. And I have also had 2 miscarriages. Both were called miscarriages. So this is essentially where I had every single pregnancy symptom in the world, including throwing up, including dizziness, including extreme fatigue, and then you get to the scan and they cannot find a heartbeat. They used to be termed like a ghost miscarriage because it was almost like your body thought it was pregnant when it wasn't. It's all to do with hormones. My first miscarriage was in 2006, and that was the first pregnancy where I became pregnant naturally. Miscarriage was at around 11 weeks, something like that. And then I had a second miscarriage before we started IVF with Nora, so between Elsie and Nora. It's kind of strange because both of those miscarriages were like miracle pregnancies. So I'd gotten pregnant naturally, whereas with all my other babies that I managed to deliver were all some kind of fertility treatment. Apparently there's no correlation, but in my head it's just too much of a coincidence. Don't know, never know. Apparently I'm wrong in that respect, but hey, who will ever know? With both of my miscarriages, I chose to go down the route of having I don't know what the new term is, but the old term is a D&C. So you go under general anaesthetic, and basically they just take all the deposited I don't know what's left really away, so you don't get any kind of infection. Obviously with miscarriages you've got no bleeding or anything, so you've got no symptoms, so it's literally like 20 minutes in theatre, you're done, you're home same day, but it's as traumatic as any other because you have all the hormones, and any woman knows how hard hormones can be. Both times my hormones probably kicked in, I would say, after about 8 weeks post-op, something like that, and I crashed and burned. I was not right. Even when I think back, I was just crazy. So you're obviously dealing with the loss and processing the loss and the plans you'd made, but dealing with the hormones as well is just something that you cannot describe unless you've experienced it. It's just rotten. So 1 in 4 pregnancies ends in a miscarriage. Miscarriage is a term up until circa 23 weeks. I'm not sure on the percentages, but a large proportion of those miscarriages occur in the first 8 weeks. Your risk of miscarriage actually then starts to decrease rapidly after 8 weeks. There's all kinds of calculators on the internet. If you've seen a heart, if you've had a scan at 8ish weeks and seen a heartbeat, there's a good chance you're going to go on to have a healthy pregnancy. That's one tip my IVF doctor told me. 12-week thing's a whole kind of little myth. Who knows where that comes from? Late term miscarriage, I don't know how anyone deals with it at the minute under our current government. Up to 23 weeks and 6 days is counted as a late term miscarriage. Now we all know that babies born from 23 weeks can survive. I think there's one around, world record around, that there's a baby that was born at 22 weeks or maybe even 21 weeks, 22 weeks and survived. So the fact that you can have a baby at that point and it survive doesn't compute with the fact that you can have a miscarriage, because with a miscarriage you basically that embryo, that baby didn't exist, whereas with a stillbirth it's very much acknowledged. You get a death certificate, you have a funeral, you have a place of rest, whatever choice you may make. So there's lots of lobbying going on with the government, there has been for the last few years, to bring down the point at which they use the term miscarriage. I think 16 or 18 weeks was the last one that I read about, which seems way more logical. I mean, we all know we go for our anomaly scan at 22 weeks and we can see our baby bouncing around, everything's formed, their kidneys are formed. To think you have your baby, you lose your baby at 23 weeks, you've got to give birth to your baby at 23 weeks, you can hold your baby at 23 weeks, yet the country won't acknowledge that you had a baby, is beyond anything that I can comprehend. So Tommies, of course, do a lot of research into miscarriage. Recurrent miscarriage can be quite troublesome for some people, so that's classed as people that have 3 or more on the run, not 3 separately. If you've had children in between, that doesn't count. I was reading a story about one lady that had something like 24 miscarriages, and then she'd gone on to have her rainbow baby, miracle, and I don't know how she put herself through it 24 times, quite honestly, because my 3 miscarriages were all separated out. They were bad enough to have to keep going and going and going and going. I don't know how she did it. Amazing. Recurrent miscarriage is probably got to be one of the hardest things to go through, because you live, and it's kind of the same for those of us that have to go through fertility issues. Your world stops and your world is around getting pregnant. You plan your life around the fact that you might be pregnant, or you might get pregnant, or you might be due a baby at that point, or you might not go for that job because you might get pregnant, or you might not book that holiday because you might get pregnant. Psychologically, it can break you. It can, pretty close. My first miscarriage, I would say I didn't deal with that very well. It was a surprise pregnancy. I was still studying for my qualifications, but very much still wanted. I'd started to kind of figure out how I was going to finish studying around having a baby and all of that kind of thing, and take a year out and finish it later, and I'd got everything kind of sorted in my head. It wasn't an ideal time, but there's never an ideal time, and we were happy because I was told at 18 that I probably would need fertility treatment, so to get pregnant naturally sort of 24, 25 was amazing, but sadly that wasn't meant to be, and even now when I think back, I didn't deal with that very well. My main method of coping is withdrawal from the world, as many people close to me will know. I just disappear, don't talk to anyone, don't communicate, don't really talk at all, aside from having to go to work, which is ironic considering I work in HR. I would come home and say literally nothing, don't talk to friends, family, nothing. And I did that for quite a long time. And then I got back on track. I got back to studying, got back to focusing on my career. And then in 2008, we finally felt ready to attempt fertility treatment, which was a big enough deal in itself, because I was concerned that I'd end up on this IVF roller coaster, and I am quite OCD, and I was scared about when we would get off that whole thing. When do you stop? You hear the stories that people remortgage their houses and that thousands and thousands of pounds. At what point do you stop and say enough is enough? And I couldn't envisage that. Anyway, we agreed that we'd give Clomid 6 months, and then on month 4 that's when we got pregnant with Billy. So because I'd had the previous miscarriage, because Billy was technically fertility treatment, I was scanned really early to make sure there was no twins, because obviously at higher risk of twins when you've had stimulation of all your hormones, even with Clomid. So I was scanned at 6 weeks, found a heartbeat, scanned at 8 weeks, found a heartbeat, scanned at 12 weeks, found a heartbeat, and I got through the first trimester. You would think I felt okay by that point, and I didn't. And as I said on my previous post, I didn't in any of my pregnancies feel safe, secure, nothing, until the baby was born. I didn't find pregnancy enjoyable. I found it anxiety ridden, which had its own issues once the baby was born. I struggled with postnatal depression, which I'll talk about in another clip. But miscarriage sucks. And the more that we can do to find reasons for miscarriage, particularly recurrent miscarriage, the easier it will get for people to accept that it's not just one of those things. Because everyone that I know that's had a miscarriage, they've never been given a reason. It's bad luck, or nature taking its course, or it wasn't meant to be bollocks, quite frankly, because none of that helps. Bad luck means, for me anyway, I must have done something wrong. It's because I drank too much caffeine. It's because I went for a run when I shouldn't have done. It's because I went to work and I should have stayed at home and rested. or you just run through so many stupid things in your mind. It's absolutely ridiculous. And the sooner we get to reasons as to why miscarriage occurs, the easier it will be for women to accept and for the medical profession to support and treat if there is some kind of treatment available. So sometimes for women, there's simple treatment like progesterone supplements. Some people need cervical stitches. There's been a lot of progression, I think, around preventing late-term miscarriage, so after 12 weeks. But there's still not an awful lot of early miscarriage research and reasons, as far as I can see. And I can only comment on my personal experience. So I know, I'm sure we all know someone that's been through it. And if you don't, there's probably someone that's not told you they've been through it, because for some reason society doesn't like to talk about it. There was, I think it was last year, there was a campaign by Tommy's or Sands or one of them, I think it was Tommy's, and it was called Miscourage rather than Miscarriage, and it was ladies telling all of their stories about the journey around miscarriage and the emotion and the strain it had placed on them psychologically and their relationships with their partner. And it definitely does take courage to try again, go through it again, risk it all again. And if anyone's in that position, I can only comment on my experience in that I was never gonna, I don't think I ever would have stopped until I got what I wanted. And that's not to say that I wouldn't have stopped trying to get pregnant myself. I would have certainly sought alternatives like surrogacy or adoption, or there's all kind of ways and means to build a family in today's world. But keep your head up, keep talking about it. The more we talk about it, the more we break the taboo, and the more open and honest we can be about how it makes us feel as women, because I think there's a great silence around early miscarriage. People don't want to hear it. People don't want to listen about it. You sometimes feel people don't even have the time for it. It's like, oh well, you got pregnant, so aren't you lucky? You can try again. How lucky? There's nothing lucky about it. Nothing lucky about miscarriage. So anyone's been through it, anyone's going through it, you have my sympathy and empathy, and be kind to yourself, because it's not your fault, nobody's fault. It's just the beast that is Mother Nature.